Ford sales for the second quarter. Remember, Ford no longer doing them on a monthly basis. For the second quarter, delivery sales fell 4.1%. That was a little weaker than some of the analysts were expecting, but certainly not a huge drop compared to expectations. The overall pace of sales, when you take this along with all the other automakers who reported yesterday, for the month of June, the pace of sales looks like it's going to come in at about 17.28 million. And guys, that was stronger than most were expecting. Most were expecting it to be at about 16.9. Yes, the retail component of that, what you and I go out and buy at a dealership, that's certainly lower. But when you look at the overall sales in the industry right now, it is holding up better than I think some people expected.
Jim and I, Phil, were talking about Tesla prior to getting to you. Always like to get your take as well on those numbers that we got, given as far as movers this morning in the auto sector, that's going to be the main one.
Right, and I think the biggest question people have is, give us some details. I mean, you talk about the order backlog growing in the second quarter, so that should put the demand question, eliminate that question altogether. Well, you know, this is one of these things where they're selective about when they want to talk about orders increasing, and other times when you ask about orders, they say, well, we don't take reservations. So selectively, they have said, we have a growing backlog from the second quarter into the third quarter, therefore it should eliminate the demand question. But Jim's right. When you read all of these analyst notes, there is not a whole lot of conviction here. We want to see some details. Analysts want to see some details, and we won't get a lot of those until the Q2 financials. And even then, Jim, I have to wonder if they're going to tell us how many vehicles were shipped to China, how many were shipped over to Europe. I mean, you've got to break this down a little bit more than simply the Model 3, S, and X.
Yeah, Phil, let's just parse what you said about we take maybe the demand side off the table. Does this subsidy going away really impact people's purchase? The subsidy doesn't seem that big.
I think by now the impact has faded. I mean, it's going from what, $3,500 down to $1,875. If you're spending $51,000 for a Model 3, or let's say you're spending $75,000 for a Model X or an S, $1,875 versus $3,500 is not going to make you walk out or stop purchasing that vehicle. There's no dealership. So you're not going to sit there and say, well, no, I'm not going to buy that because it's $1,875. So I think that storyline, if you will, has faded away. And now the question becomes, Jim, when the competition comes, if it comes, I know we've been waiting for it. I mean, that's a nice little bonus for you to throw at a potential buyer relative to Tesla. Hey, $7,000, $7,500 federal EV tax credit. But we haven't seen that yet. Remember, we get Porsche later this year. That will be the challenge to the Model S.
Phil, I don't want to bury the lead. I mean, what you said at the beginning is that actual vehicle sales are stronger. Phil, it has been, I mean, you know, I parse everything you say. This is rather surprising. We haven't had really good numbers in a long time. Is something changing?
No, I think that it's a sustained growth. And I think people were going into June thinking that we might have to see some production cuts when it comes especially to SUVs and crossovers. And everybody was kind of looking around. It was like a gunfight at the OK Corral. All the automakers looking at each other saying, who's going to be the first one to cut production? Because I'm not cutting production. And so far, the sales have held up relatively strong. Look, 17.28 is not far from where we were a couple of years ago at 17.6 million in terms of a pace of sales. So I think a lot of people are looking at the consumer confidence, low unemployment, strength of the economy, low interest rates. That has people continuing to buy.
Certainly seems to. Phil, thank you. Phil LeBeau from Chicago on those Ford numbers, and always a lot more to talk to Phil about.